The lights went out at 3:47, and that's when I heard Marcus screaming. Not the kind of scream you make when you're startled. This was the sound of a man whose mind had just broken against something it couldn't process. I was halfway down corridor C when the emergency reds kicked in, bathing everything in that sick crimson glow that makes your own shadow look like it's trying to kill you. Marcus, I was running now, mag boots barely keeping contact with the deck plating. The Goliath's artificial gravity had been flickering for the past 6 hours, ever since we picked up that thing outside. I found him in the observation deck, pressed against the far wall, eyes wide enough to show white all the way around. His tablet had shattered on the floor. He was pointing at the viewport with a shaking hand. "It moved," he whispered. "Kira, it fucking moved." I looked through the reinforced glass into the black. The object was still there, exactly where it had been for the past 14 hours. A geometric mass roughly the size of Manhattan, floating in the void between systems where nothing should exist. We'd been studying it, cataloging it, running every scan the Goliath had. Dead. Inert. A derelict from some civilization we couldn't even imagine. Except now, as I stared at it, I could see he was right. It was rotating. Slowly. Deliberately. Like something waking up. "Get Captain Reeves," I said, my voice steadier than my hands. "Right now." Marcus didn't move. He was still staring at it, his breathing coming in short, sharp gasps. I grabbed his shoulder and shook him hard enough to rattle his teeth. "Marcus. Move." He stumbled past me, and I was alone with the thing outside. The Goliath's long-range sensors had found it 3 days ago, a gravitational anomaly that shouldn't exist in this region of space. We'd been en route to the Kepler colonies with a crew of 47 when command diverted us to investigate. Standard first contact protocol. Except this wasn't first contact. This was first discovery of something that made our entire fleet look like children's toys. The object was covered in what looked like panels or plates, each one the size of a football field, arranged in patterns that hurt to look at too long. They didn't follow any geometry I recognized. Angles that seemed to shift when you looked away. Surfaces that reflected light in ways that suggested impossible depths. And now it was moving. My comm unit crackled. "Kira, this is Reeves. Get to the bridge. Now." I ran. The Goliath was a deep space research vessel, built for long-range exploration and equipped with enough scientific equipment to scan a solar system down to its quantum structure. Right now, every screen on the bridge was lit up with data that made no sense. Reeves was standing in the center of the command deck, her face illuminated by holographic displays showing readings that kept changing. "Tell me what I'm looking at," she said without preamble. Dr. Chen, our lead physicist, was practically vibrating with either excitement or terror. "It's generating its own gravitational field. Not a strong one, but it's there. It shouldn't be possible without massive energy output, and we're detecting nothing. No heat signature, no radiation, no electromagnetic activity. But it's pulling on us. 0.003 G, barely measurable, but increasing. Increasing how fast? Exponentially. At current rates, in 6 hours it'll have enough pull to affect our orbit." Reeves looked at me. "You saw it move. Marcus saw it first. It's rotating. Slow, but steady. Show me the external feed." The main screen switched to the outside view. The object dominated the frame, a mass of impossible architecture floating against the star field. As we watched, one of the massive panels shifted with the kind of precision that spoke of active control. Not random. Not decay. Purpose. "Are we being scanned?" Reeves asked. Chen shook his head. "We don't know. Our instruments aren't picking up anything we'd recognize as a scanning beam," but he trailed off, pointing to a display showing the Goliath's hull integrity. "We're getting microvibrations across the entire ship. Like something's feeling us out." The temperature on the bridge dropped. Not metaphorically. I saw my breath mist in front of me. Environmental, Reeves snapped. What's happening to life support? No response. Environmental. The comm stayed silent. Reeves' jaw tightened. Chen, take over environmental monitoring from here. Kira, get down to Deck 3 and find out why they're not responding. I was already moving. Deck 3 was where we housed the environmental systems, waste recycling, and most of the ship's critical infrastructure. It should have been humming with activity, but as I descended through the access shaft, I heard nothing. The silence was wrong. The Goliath was never silent. There was always the background thrum of machinery, the whisper of air through vents, the distant clang of automated systems doing their work. Now there was nothing. The access hatch opened onto a darkened corridor. Emergency lights cast long shadows. I pulled my flashlight and swept it across the space. Empty. No crew. No movement. This is Kira Chen to environmental control. Respond. Static. I moved forward, checking each compartment. The first 3 were empty, systems running on automatic, displays showing normal readings. Then I reached the main environmental hub, and I stopped. The door was open. It shouldn't have been. It required 2-person authorization to access, biometric locks, the works. But it hung wide, and beyond it I could see the main control station bathed in that sickly red emergency lighting. Someone was sitting at the console. Perfectly still. Hey, I called out. You okay? No response. I stepped inside, and immediately my skin started crawling. The temperature was wrong. Too cold. My flashlight beam caught frost forming on the metal surfaces. The person at the console was Davis, one of our environmental techs. He was staring at his screen, hands resting on the keyboard. Not moving. Not blinking. Davis. I reached out and touched his shoulder. He was ice cold. I pulled my hand back and checked his vitals monitor. Nothing. No pulse. No respiration. But he'd been alive 20 minutes ago. I'd seen him in the mess hall. Then I looked at what was on his screen. It was the object. The feed from outside. But this wasn't the view from any of our external cameras. This was closer. Much closer. Close enough to see details we shouldn't have been able to resolve. Close enough to see that the panels weren't panels at all. They were openings. And something was looking back. I stumbled backward, hit the comm bridge. This is Kira. We have a situation on Deck 3. Davis is dead. I don't know how, but he's. The ship lurched. Not a gentle drift. A violent, sudden acceleration that threw me against the bulkhead hard enough to knock the wind from my lungs. Alarms started screaming. The emergency lights flickered and died, plunging everything into absolute darkness. Then the gravity cut out entirely. I was floating, disoriented, my flashlight spinning away into the black. I grabbed for anything solid, found a support beam, pulled myself toward where I remembered the door being. The ship was shaking now, a deep vibration that I felt in my bones. My comm crackled with overlapping voices. Shouting. Panic. Reeves trying to maintain order. And underneath it all, a sound that shouldn't have been possible in the vacuum of space. A low, resonant hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. I pulled myself through the door, into the corridor, following the emergency guide lights that were starting to flicker back to life. I needed to get back to the bridge. Needed to find out what was happening. But as I hauled myself along the handholds, I passed a viewport, and I made the mistake of looking out. The object was closer. Much closer. Close enough that I could see the details of its surface, the way the panels moved with fluid precision, opening and closing like breathing. Close enough to see that the structure wasn't just big. It was vast beyond comprehension, stretching away in all directions, and what we'd been studying was just a small protrusion from something far, far larger. And it was opening. The panels were peeling back, revealing an interior that glowed with a light that had no color I could name. Not blue. Not green. Something else. Something that made my eyes water and my head pound. The Goliath was drifting toward it, pulled by that impossible gravitational field, and we were accelerating. I made it to the bridge access shaft and pulled myself up. The command deck was chaos. Half the crew was trying to regain control of the ship's systems while the other half stared at the screens showing the thing outside. "We're caught in its field," Chen was saying, his voice tight with fear. "Engines are at full reverse thrust. It's not enough. We're being pulled in." "Cut engines," Reeves ordered. "If we can't break free, we're just wasting power. Redirect everything to shields." "Shields won't do anything against gravity." "I know. But maybe they'll do something against whatever's inside that thing." I strapped into my station, pulled up the sensor feeds. The readings were insane. The object was generating fields we didn't have names for. Our instruments were detecting spatial distortions, temporal fluctuations, energy signatures that suggested the thing was pulling power directly from vacuum. And we were accelerating toward it at an increasing rate. "Time until we reach the opening," Reeves asked. 11 minutes, someone said. "Options. Give me anything." Silence. Because there were no options. We were 47 people on a research vessel with no weapons, no military-grade engines, no way to fight against something that could casually manipulate gravity itself. We were insects caught in a web, and the spider was reeling us in. "We need to send a message," I heard myself saying. "To command. To anyone. Tell them what we found." Reeves looked at me, and I saw the acceptance in her eyes. She knew. We all knew. "Do it." I started composing the transmission. Coordinates. Sensor data. Everything we'd learned about the object. I kept my words clinical, professional, even though my hands were shaking. Even though I could see on the screens that the opening was growing larger, that we were close enough now to see structure inside. Architecture. Corridors. Spaces vast enough to swallow cities. "Captain," Chen said quietly. "I'm picking up something. A transmission. From inside. Can you decode it?" "It's not encrypted. He paused, his face going pale. "It's in English." Everyone stopped. The bridge went silent except for the alarms. "Play it," Reeves ordered. The speakers crackled. And then a voice came through. Human. Male. Calm. "This is Captain James Reichart of the UNSS Prometheus. To any ship receiving this message, do not approach the structure. I repeat, do not approach. It is not what it appears to be. It is not abandoned. It is not safe. We made contact 3 days ago. We thought we could communicate. We were wrong. It's not a ship. It's not a station. It's static." Then another voice. Female. Panicked. "They're inside the ship. They're in the walls. Oh God, they're in the walls. We can't." More static. Then silence. I felt my chest tighten. The Prometheus. That was a colony ship. Sent out 40 years ago with 8,000 colonists. They'd reported reaching their destination system. Then nothing. They'd been listed as lost, presumed destroyed in some disaster. But they were here. Or they had been. That was recorded 40 years ago, Marcus asked from his station. No, Chen said, checking the metadata. The timestamp says 3 days ago. Impossible. The Prometheus had been missing for 4 decades. Unless. Time dilation, I said. If the object is manipulating gravity and space, it could be affecting local time. What was 40 years for the rest of the galaxy could have been 3 days for them. That means they're still in there, Reeves said. Or what's left of them. 8,000 people. Inside that thing for 3 days of subjective time. I tried not to imagine what that meant. We're entering the structure, someone announced. I looked at the main screen. The Goliath was passing through the opening, through panels the size of mountains, into a space so large our sensors couldn't find the far walls. The light was everywhere, that nameless color that made my brain hurt, and as we drifted deeper, I saw things in the distance. Structures. Or maybe creatures. It was impossible to tell. They moved with liquid grace, massive and incomprehensible, tending to tasks I couldn't begin to understand. And debris. Lots of debris. Ships. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Vessels from civilizations I didn't recognize, twisted and broken, drifting in the vast internal space like leaves in a pond. And among them, I saw something that made my blood freeze. A colony ship. Human design. The name painted on its hull barely visible beneath the damage. Prometheus. It had been torn apart. Opened like a flower, its internal decks exposed to the void. I could see bodies floating in the wreckage. Thousands of them, perfectly preserved in the cold vacuum. Oh God, someone whispered. The Goliath drifted deeper. Our instruments showed the space extending for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. This wasn't just an object. This was a structure on the scale of a moon. A manufactured space designed for a purpose we couldn't comprehend. Captain, Chen said, his voice barely audible. I'm detecting movement. Something's approaching from the interior. The sensors showed multiple contacts. Large. Moving with purpose. Heading toward us. Seal all bulkheads, Reeves ordered. Everyone into pressure suits. If they breach the hull, I want. The ship shuddered. Something had made contact. Not a collision. A connection. I felt it through the deck plating, a vibration that spoke of metal being gripped by something impossibly strong. Hull breach, someone called out. Deck 5, Section 12. That's not possible, Chen said. Our hull is reinforced carbon composite. Nothing should be able to. Another shudder. Another breach. Deck 7. Then Deck 3. They were coming from all directions, punching through the Goliath's armor like it was paper. Evacuate the affected sections, Reeves said. Everyone to the bridge. Seal the access points. But I could hear it in her voice. She knew it was useless. If they could breach the hull that easily, a sealed door wouldn't stop them. The crew was moving, running, pulling on pressure suits as they went. I grabbed my own from the emergency locker, started sealing it up. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely work the clasps. Kira. I turned. Marcus was standing there, fully suited, his face pale behind his visor. He held out his hand. Not reaching for me. Pointing at something behind me. I turned slowly. The bridge viewport showed the interior of the structure, that vast impossible space lit by that wrong light. And floating there, directly in front of us, maybe 100 meters away, was something I had no words for. It was huge. Easily the size of the Goliath. And it was looking at us. I knew it was looking even though it had nothing I could identify as eyes. Its surface was covered in the same panels as the exterior structure, constantly shifting, opening and closing, revealing depths that seemed to go on forever. And protruding from its mass were things that might have been limbs or appendages or tools, geometric and precise and utterly alien. As we watched, one of those appendages extended toward the ship. Slowly. Almost gently. It touched the hull near the bridge, and I felt the contact through the deck plating. A soft tap. Curious. Exploratory. Then it started to pull. The hull groaned. Metal screamed. The entire ship tilted as we were dragged forward, pulled toward the thing outside. Alarms were going insane. The artificial gravity was failing again, and I had to grab onto my station to keep from floating away. "They're taking us apart," Chen said, watching his screens. "They're systematically dismantling the ship." "Why?" Marcus asked. "To study us. To understand us." Chen's voice was weirdly calm, like he'd crossed some threshold of fear and come out the other side into acceptance. "Like we were trying to study them." The ship lurched again. I heard a distant tearing sound, the kind of noise that meant structural failure. Through the viewport, I saw a piece of the Goliath drift past. Part of the engine section, ripped clean away, tumbling into the vast interior space. "Emergency pods," Reeves said. "Everyone to the emergency pods. Maybe if we scatter, some of us can make it to the opening." It was a desperate plan. The pods were designed for planetary evacuation, not deep space escape. But it was something. Movement. Action. Better than waiting to be torn apart. The crew started moving toward the pod access points. I was about to follow when I saw something on my screen that made me stop. A signal. Faint, but there. Coming from inside the structure. "Captain," I said. "I'm picking up a transmission. Human origin. It's..." I ran the analysis. The signal was looping. A recorded message. And it was coming from deep inside the structure, from somewhere beyond the Prometheus wreckage. "It's a beacon," I said. "Someone's still alive in there." Reeves turned to look at me. "That's not possible. Even if someone survived the Prometheus incident, they'd be dead by now. No air. No power. The timestamp says it's active. Broadcasting right now." She stared at me for a long moment. Around us, the ship was being torn apart. People were running. Dying. And we were arguing about an impossible signal. "What does it say?" she finally asked. I isolated the transmission, played it through the bridge speakers. It was a woman's voice. Young. Terrified. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen of the Prometheus. If anyone can hear this, we're still alive. Some of us. They didn't kill us. They kept us. They're keeping us in I don't know what to call it. A place. A cage. A habitat. We've been here for I've lost track. Days. Weeks. But time is wrong here. The clocks don't work. Nothing works the way it should. They're studying us. Watching us. Learning from us. And when they're done." A pause. In the background, I could hear other voices. Screaming. "When they're done, they'll let us go. That's what we thought at first. But we've seen it happen. To others. They let them go. They send them back. But they're not the same. Something changes. Something inside. And then they're not human anymore. There's something else. Something that looks human but isn't. And they go back to the colonies. To Earth. And no one knows. No one can tell. They walk among us and they spread and they wait and..." The transmission cut off. The bridge was silent. Everyone had stopped moving. We all understood what we just heard. This wasn't first contact. This wasn't even close to first contact. This was something that had been happening for a long time. How many ships had gone missing over the years? How many colonies had gone silent? How many people had returned from deep space just slightly different, carrying something back with them? "Oh God," Marcus whispered. "The colonies. All those colonies that went dark. They're not lost. They're..." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. New plan, Reeves said, her voice cutting through the shock. We don't run. We can't run. They'll just catch us and study us and send us back like the others. Like the ones from the Prometheus. Like everyone else they've caught over the years. Then what do we do? Someone asked. She looked around at all of us. 47 people. The last crew of the Goliath. Maybe the last humans who knew the truth. We make sure no one else comes looking for us, she said. We make sure this place stays hidden. How? She turned to Chen. The reactor. Can you overload it? His eyes went wide. Captain, if I overload the reactor in here, the explosion will. I know what it'll do. Can you do it? He nodded slowly. Yes. But it'll take time. 10, 15 minutes. Then get started. Everyone else, to the pods. Get as far from the ship as you can. Maybe the explosion will create enough debris to block the opening. Maybe it'll be enough to scare away anyone else who comes looking. That's not a plan, Marcus said. That's suicide. You got a better idea. Silence. Then move. People started running. But I stayed at my station, staring at the screen showing that impossible structure, that vast manufactured space filled with the wreckage of civilizations. And I thought about Earth. About the colonies. About how many people might already be walking around wearing human faces, waiting for something. Kira, Reeves said. Go. Someone needs to help Chen with the reactor, I said. And someone needs to keep transmitting. Let people know what we found. What this place is. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded. Make sure the message is clear. Make sure they understand. I will. She left. I heard her footsteps receding down the corridor, heard her voice over the comm organizing the evacuation. Around me, the bridge was emptying. Soon it was just me and Chen, who'd gone down to engineering to start the reactor overload. I composed my message carefully. No room for misinterpretation. No room for hope. Just facts. This is Kira Chen of the UNSS Goliath. We have encountered a massive artificial structure in the deep void between the Kepler colonies and Earth. It is not abandoned. It is not safe. It has been capturing ships for unknown lengths of time. The Prometheus was here. Its crew was taken, studied, and returned as something else. We have reason to believe this has been happening for decades, possibly longer. The structure demonstrates control over gravity, time, and space itself. We cannot escape. We cannot fight. We are initiating self-destruct to prevent our capture and to warn others. Do not search for us. Do not approach any structures matching these coordinates. Do not trust anyone who returns from this region of space. They are not what they appear to be. I attached all our sensor data. Everything we'd learned. Transmitted it on all frequencies, maximum power. Then I sat back and waited. The ship was coming apart around me. I could hear it. Feel it. Those things outside were patient. Methodical. They weren't rushing. Why would they? They had all the time in the world. My comm crackled. Kira, this is Chen. Reactors set. 12 minutes to overload. I'm heading to the pods. You should. I'm staying, I said. Someone needs to keep transmitting until the end. Make sure the message gets out. A pause. Okay. It's been good working with you. You too, Chen. The comm went quiet. I was alone on the bridge, floating in zero gravity, watching through the viewport as the Goliath was systematically dismantled. I saw pieces of the hull drift away. Saw our escape pods launching, tiny sparks fleeing into the darkness. I hoped some of them would make it. I hoped the explosion would be enough. Then I saw something else. The thing outside, the massive entity that had been pulling the ship apart, had stopped. It was still. And even though it had nothing I could recognize as sensory organs, I felt it watching me. Studying me. One of its appendages extended toward the bridge viewport. Slowly. It touched the reinforced glass, and I saw frost spread from the point of contact. The metal groaned. The glass began to crack. And in my head, I heard something. Not words. Not sounds. Something deeper. A pressure. A presence. Like something was trying to push its way into my thoughts. It was curious. I could feel that. It wanted to understand. Wanted to know why I'd stayed. Why I wasn't running like the others. I transmitted one more message. Because fuck you. The glass shattered. Everything happened at once. Explosive decompression. The bridge tore itself apart. I was pulled toward the breach, my suit's emergency systems kicking in, sealing me from the vacuum. But I was tumbling, spinning, lost in the chaos of debris and shattered equipment. And then something caught me. An appendage. One of those geometric limbs. It wrapped around my waist with surprising gentleness, held me suspended in the void. I was facing the thing now. Close enough to see the details of its surface. The panels were opening, revealing internal structures that looked like circuitry but moved like living tissue. And in those depths, I saw things that might have been eyes or sensors or something else entirely. It was looking at me. Really looking. And I felt that presence again, stronger now, pushing into my head. Curious. Interested. It wanted to know what I knew. Wanted to understand humanity. Wanted to learn. And then it would let me go. Send me back. Like the others. The reactor was going to explode in 7 minutes. I checked my suit's chronometer, watched the seconds tick down. The thing holding me didn't seem to care. Maybe it didn't understand. Maybe it didn't think we were capable of suicide. 6 minutes. The appendage started moving, pulling me deeper into the structure. Away from the wreckage of the Goliath. Away from the breach. I tried to struggle, but it was like fighting a mountain. Useless. 5 minutes. I passed through openings in the structure's interior walls. Saw spaces beyond that defied geometry. Corridors that twisted in ways that shouldn't be possible. Chambers filled with things I had no context for. And everywhere, that wrong light, casting shadows that moved independently of their sources. For minutes. I saw others. People. Floating in transparent chambers, unconscious or sleeping or dead. I recognized the uniforms. Prometheus crew. But also others. Older designs. Ships that had been lost generations ago. They were all here. All preserved. All being studied. 3 minutes. The appendage pulled me into a large chamber, maybe half a kilometer across. The walls were covered in those shifting panels. And in the center, suspended by invisible forces, was a human figure. Captain Reichardt. The Prometheus commander. His eyes were open, but there was nothing behind them. He was alive but empty, a shell waiting to be filled with something new. 2 minutes. The appendage positioned me next to him. I felt other appendages touching my suit, probing, trying to understand the mechanism. Trying to get inside. 1 minute. I thought about Earth. About everyone I'd never see again. About all the people in the colonies who might already be compromised. About humanity's future in a universe where things like this existed. 30 seconds. The presence in my head was overwhelming now. Crushing. It was inside my thoughts, rifling through my memories, taking everything I knew. Everything I'd experienced. Learning. Always learning. 10 seconds. I felt the appendages start to penetrate my suit. Felt something cold and sharp pushing through the layers, reaching for my skin. 5 seconds. I closed my eyes. 4. 3. 2. The reactor exploded. I felt it through the structure itself, a shockwave that traveled through the metal and the impossible geometry. The grip on me loosened for just a moment, and in that moment, I was thrown free, tumbling through the chamber, bouncing off walls that shouldn't exist. Everything was chaos. The light was flickering. The panels were opening and closing randomly, and through the gaps I could see the void outside. The explosion had been massive. The Goliath's reactor had taken out a chunk of the structure, blown a new opening in the impossible architecture. And I was being pulled toward it. Explosive decompression, but on a scale I couldn't comprehend. The entire chamber was venting atmosphere into space, dragging everything with it. Including me. I shot through the opening, through twisted metal and shattered panels, out into the void. Behind me, I could see the structure. It was damaged. Not destroyed, but hurt. And it was closing. The panels were sealing over the breach, cutting off the interior. I was free. Floating in space. My suit's oxygen showed 18 minutes remaining. Around me, I saw other debris. Pieces of the Goliath. Some of the escape pods. And in the distance, maybe a kilometer away, I saw something that made my heart jump. A pod. Moving under power. Heading away from the structure. I activated my suit's emergency beacon, used the last of my thruster fuel to start drifting in that direction. It would take more than 18 minutes to reach it. I knew that. But I had to try. The structure was shrinking behind me. Or rather, I was drifting away from it. I watched it close, seal itself, return to that geometric dormancy that had first attracted us. In a few hours, it would look abandoned again. Inert. Safe. But I knew better. And I'd transmitted that knowledge. Sent it out into the void. Maybe someone would receive it. Maybe they'd believe it. Or maybe they'd think we were crazy. Maybe they'd send another ship to investigate. And another. And another. My oxygen counter hit 17 minutes. The pod was still far away. I could see it more clearly now. One of ours. Moving away at a steady pace. If they'd picked up my beacon, they weren't changing course. Maybe their communications were damaged. Maybe they couldn't hear me. 16 minutes. I thought about Dr. Chen. The woman from the Prometheus. Her message had said they were being studied. Changed. Sent back. I wondered how many had made it back to Earth. How many were walking among us right now, wearing human faces, waiting. 15 minutes. Something caught my eye. Movement. I turned my head, looked back at the structure. It was opening again. Just one panel. Just one small opening. And something was emerging. An appendage. Long geometric. Searching. It was coming for me. 14 minutes. I used my suit's emergency systems, overrode the safety protocols, and vented half my remaining oxygen directly behind me. The thrust was minimal, but it was enough to change my trajectory, send me spinning away at a slightly different angle. The appendage missed me by meters. I watched it extend further, reaching, but I was outside its range now. Drifting away. Escaping. 13 minutes. The structure closed again. Final. Permanent. And I was alone in the void with a distant pod and fading oxygen. I don't know how long I floated there. My suit's systems were failing one by one. Power. Heat. Oxygen. I watched the counter tick down and thought about all the things I'd never get to do. All the people I'd never see again. At some point, I must have lost consciousness. Because the next thing I remember is light. Harsh. Bright. And hands pulling at my suit. Voices. She's alive. Barely, but she's alive. Get her inside. Now. How long was she out there? Too long. Way too long. I tried to speak, tried to tell them about the message I'd sent. About the structure. About the danger. But my voice wouldn't work. My throat was raw. My lungs burned. Someone was holding my hand. Squeezing tight. You're safe now. You're going to be okay. But I wasn't sure about that. Because as my vision cleared, as I started to see faces, I noticed something wrong. The crew of the pod were looking at me with an expression I recognized. I'd seen it before, in the wreckage of the Prometheus. In the face of Captain Reichardt as he floated in that chamber. They were smiling. But their eyes were empty. "Welcome back," one of them said. "We've been waiting for you." And I realized, with a horror that went deeper than anything I'd felt in the structure, that I hadn't escaped at all. I'd been let go. Just like the others. The pod's course was already set. Back to Earth. Back to the colonies. And I was going with them, whether I wanted to or not. I tried to fight, tried to scream, but my body wouldn't respond. Something was wrong inside. Something had changed during those last moments in the structure. The presence I'd felt. The thing pushing into my thoughts. It hadn't been studying me. It had been planting something. I could feel it now, dormant but present, waiting in the dark spaces of my mind. Waiting until we reached Earth. Waiting until I could walk among the others, speak to them, touch them. Spread. The pod's engines hummed steadily. 8 weeks to Earth at current speed. 8 weeks for whatever was inside me to grow. To integrate. To become part of who I was until I couldn't tell where I ended and it began. I closed my eyes and thought about my message. The transmission I'd sent. Maybe someone would receive it. Maybe they'd understand. Maybe they'd know not to trust us when we arrived. But probably not. Because how do you fight an invasion when the enemy wears the faces of the people you love? When they sound right and act right and pass every test. When they're not even aware of what they've become. You don't. You just welcome them home. And then it starts all over again.